You're listening in on an animated discussion about Batman the Animated Series with two experts in their fields. I'm Joshua Unruh, superhero scholar.
And I'm Caleb Masters, your friendly neighborhood film critic extraordinaire from thecinematropolis.com. And today's topic is the Season 1 episode, Pretty Poison. Again, another episode that is filled with some bizarre choices, some stylistic clashes, and all sorts of femme fatale goodness. Joshua, are you ready for this?
I also have been seduced by this episode, so I couldn't be more ready.
Oh my goodness. We got jokes, got puns. Let's go ahead and jump right into the discussion. As we mentioned in our first episode, the influence and impact of Batman the Animated Series, it's felt today in 2017, 25 years after the first series came out. So I think the stylings here are strange but important, and we again see another episode that is drawing from the well of noir, especially with Poison Ivy, who is like the Batman femme fatale, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you get a little bit of femme fatale nods from somebody like Catwoman or even Talia al Ghul, who we'll see much later down the road. But Pamela's really it. She is the one who uses her sexuality as a weapon more than anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty from the get-go. She's a mysterious woman who just shows up out of nowhere. The next thing we know, she's seducing one of our main characters, Harvey Dent. But there's more to her than meets the eye, and we don't know how much we can trust her. And because Batman is our star, we know pretty quickly. He knows pretty quickly. I can't trust her.
This is a question I want to put to our listeners, actually, because even in 1992, I came to this episode with too much extraneous Batman knowledge for it to be a mystery to me who the villain was. As soon as I heard the name Pamela Isley, I was like, oh, that's Poison Ivy. She's definitely the one who poisoned Harvey Dent. And I think you were in a similar boat.
Yeah, I mean, even when I started watching the show as a kid, I think I already had some, just because I grew up in my head in nerd culture, I had to some degree knew who Poison Ivy was. So it seemed kind of obvious because red hair and the body type and everything. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. But I would say 1992, this is again before superheroes are everywhere and everything, and everyone knows the origin of every supervillain ever. And I think Poison Ivy, to a lot of people, this could have been their first introduction. So
absolutely.
So I think maybe there was a legitimate question, well, who did it?
They were definitely trying to make it a mystery in the show. They never really show her even from behind. Like, we don't get a piece of red hair in the gardening clothes until very close to the end. So that's a question I'll put to the listeners. Listeners who came to this with less Batman knowledge or general superhero knowledge than Caleb and I bring, tell me, was it a mystery to you? And did the mystery work on that level? Because I think it works in other ways, which we'll talk about a little more. But did it work? Were you curious? Did you not realize until Batman did that Pamela Isley was the person who poisoned Harvey Dent?
I think it's a great question, but you know what I like about this episode, Joshua? Like all great mystery stories, is even when you know the answer, the story and the ride is still pretty compelling.
Oh, 100%. Especially with some of the other stylistic choices that they make throughout this episode. Mm-hmm. The juxtaposition of very similar scenes or very discordant scenes or even repeats of scenes just really was a very interesting choice for this episode. I think worked in every single space except for the main bookends. What do you think?
Well, the bookends were strange. So I think, let's go ahead and talk about the bookends here, because we have use of flashbacks, which is kind of cool because I'm a sucker. I loved Lost. I love all Christopher Nolan things, so flashbacks all the time, right?
You're going to get it, and right afterwards, you're going to get a flash sideways.
Yes.
So,
right.
I mean,
Yes.
There's an interesting use there.
There's some playing with time and space that I appreciate. And they do it, though, by showcasing sepia tone, which when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool that they were trying to distinguish it. But the more I watched it, the more I'm like, that really doesn't add anything to it. I don't think it really... Why go with the sepia tone? Why not go with black and white, honestly, at that point, So it's okay. I like it. It's in sepia tone. I think it sets up the mystery. What's really weird about Flashback, though, is when it actually jumps to the future. The subtitle is 5 years later, a better, safer Gotham.
Riffing off the thing that Harvey Dent said when he broke ground on this prison, that it would lead to a better, safer Gotham. And then we've got this unknown narrator casting shade over that suggestion.
I mean, there's only a bunch of supervillains running throughout Gotham. I mean, I think it's better and safer. What do you think, Joshua?
Okay, I do not approve of this sarcasm. I'm just going to say it. I don't approve of
I don't know what you're talking about, Joshua. Come on. It's better and safer. There's a prison. We all know that prisons makes things better and safer.
Okay, so first of all, who is this narrator?
Yeah, correct.
Okay,
yeah.
I mean, it breaks the structure a little bit for all of a sudden for us to have a narrator.
There's not too many times Batman the Animated Series uses title cards like that, like not title cards,
Explanatory subtitles.
Yeah. So firstly, that's kind of somewhat lazy choice and just strange.
I don't like the shade that it casts on Batman. That has he not been doing a good job in 5 years, or is it shade supposed to be on Harvey Dent? If you need to be specific.
Or maybe they were just oblivious to the fact that crime's gotten worse in Gotham.
Listen, no. He's the world's best crime fighter. It's now super crime that is the problem.
Okay.
You were talking about the subtitles, but you mentioned the title card. And really, I love the title cards all across Batman the Animated Series. We talked a little bit about that in On Leather Wings, that is a real treat for me. But as far as doing something that doesn't quite work as well as you'd like, I think we actually see that in the title card.
Yeah.
You have vines around the edge, and it says Pretty Poison as the title, but they actually let the title cover up the rose in the title card.
Right.
And then you go directly from that kind of weird misstep into sepia tones on a show where the palette is so muted, and then you go directly from that into this weird narrator sarcastic space. I think it's worth taking a step back and saying, Caleb and I really like this episode a lot.
Yeah.
The stuff that works, super works. But there are some bumpy choices, especially at the beginning and the very end.
Right. And it feels like, again, they're trying to make everything come full circle, like a nice serial. Oh, there's this mystery that's set up 5 years ago, and by the end it comes full circle back to the prison.
Back to the prison.
Which, again, is strange because people like Poison Ivy typically go to, Arkham Asylum.
That's right. We have a whole place for that. That they already established. Well, they do a couple of things. They established that Arkham exists in the very second episode, which is otherwise not very good, and that's why we skipped it.
Batman, Jingle Bells, Batman Smells, Robin Laid an Egg.
Yes. Christmas with the Joker also has stylistic questions, but not interesting ones.
Very strange episode 2.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Might be a goal on the Patreon. If you really want to hear us talk about a terrible episode, Christmas with the Joker is it, especially for an episode 2, and if enough money is raised, we'll subject you to it.
Absolutely.
So we've already established the existence of Arkham Asylum for the criminally insane. By the time we get to the end of this episode, Pamela is clearly unhinged, but we had to make it come full circle back to this prison, even though it doesn't make sense. So I feel like bumpy road at the beginning and the end.
No, I agree. It just feels jarring more than anything, because really the episode doesn't even get started until about 5 or 6 minutes in.
I timed it.
There's a lot of exposition.
We do not have the plot actually start until the 8-minute mark.
Wow.
Harvey Dent does not go face down into his moose until slightly after the 8-minute mark of a 22-minute episode.
Or
cartoon.
as Harvey Bullock would tell us, the moose.
You went face down in your chocolate mousse.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, so fun. So I think that's some interesting stylistic points. The one other thing I want to mention here about the style is whenever we get to Ivy's greenhouse, holy crap, talk about an escalation. Like, hey, got this femme fatale, we think she might have poisoned. Oh my god, giant plans that look like they're from Cthulhu. It's crazy. Like these are Lovecraftian design. They've got the big teeth. It's nothing we haven't seen in animation, especially up to date. But it's the way it matches with the animated style it's just super creepy.
It's very creepy. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about the mystery here in a minute, because the mystery is one of the parts that works fantastically, I think.
Yeah.
Even knowing who done it ahead of time, the stages of going through it work really well. But I feel like there's a moment when Batman might be leaving the Batcave thinking he's just going to slap cuffs on a botanist, and then for him to wind up in this horror movie, is a heck of an escalation. Yeah. But I like it. I mean, it's really creepy and weird, and also sets up Poison Ivy to be an even more effective supervillain going forward.
Right. No, I completely agree. She's a force to be reckoned with, which, this is a little hint of woman empowerment that I think the show does. And while I can't say everything the DC animated universe holds true to empowering women,
True.
I think this is a great example of them doing that very early on with this character. Yeah, sure, she's a seductress, but she's very smart. She's using that as a tool in her toolbox to get what she wants, which in this case is vengeance. So she's going after Harvey Dent. And you know what? She's probably going to go after Bruce Wayne since they broke ground together on the prison. So I think it's a real great testament to the idea that women can and are often just as threatening, smart, and cunning as your male supervillains.
Absolutely.
If not more so.
Absolutely. And she's clearly beautiful, even by the standards of the way that Bruce Timm tends to draw ladies. She's clearly supposed to stand out from that crowd. You have men in the restaurant, all of the men turning to watch her go. But getting close enough to Harvey to get him to fall in love with her and kiss him is actually more like step 3 of the plan. She needed her brain for steps 1 and 2, which was make the poison, turn the poison into makeup, now go seduce him. When we come into the story, she's clearly very much running the seduction part of the con. But we come to find out she has these other sections, and the way that we come to find out, we see that she has a next level of the con, or at least I think she does. We may have a little difference of opinion on that.
Well, I don't know. I think we might agree. We're talking about the Bruce Wayne death, right?
Yeah, I mean, they broke ground together, so she needs to get revenge on both Harvey Dent and Bruce Wayne.
Well, and notice the way she was talking to Harvey Dent. She was asking a lot of Bruce Wayne questions.
Tell me about your friend. Yeah.
Who, by the way, side note, Harvey Dent apparently knows everything there is to know about Bruce Wayne, according to him. So, fun stuff.
We mentioned in the last episode that Harvey Dent is a big deal. And if you don't know who he is, it's coming. It's episode 10 and 11 of Batman the Animated Series. And what's fascinating is that Harvey and Bruce both consider each other very good friends. We can tell by this flash sideways fun thing where Harvey says something that gets taken completely out of context by something Batman is doing. We can see by that Harvey clearly has no idea who Bruce Wayne actually is. Just as clearly when we get to the Harvey-focused episodes, Bruce Wayne has no idea who his friend is. So remember, B-Taz plays the long game with these things.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Again, that's subtext. And I really do think that she was going to go after Bruce Wayne, not knowing what she was getting into.
Again, it's a little bit subtextual because the animation is legitimately not as good in this episode as it was in Leather Wings and will be again. But when she goes in to hug Bruce Wayne at the hospital and she's crying on his shoulder and all that stuff, we don't really get like a wet eyes, quiver lip look from her because I don't think the animators were up to the challenge. But what we do get is a very sardonic side eye from Bruce Wayne where he goes, yep, this is a woman I need to look into. So what tipped him off? The fact that she started to try and run a seduction con on Batman.
Exactly.
He's going to see that coming. That's the stuff that really works, by the way. The intricacy of this case, how it's a poisoning, the cops are clearly not up to the challenge of solving it, but Bruce Wayne is there in the hospital and gets the blood sample and just all that, beat by beat, figuring out of the thing, plus the horror elements at the end. Those parts all work fantastically.
Right. No, absolutely. So if we're going to delve into any characters in this episode, let's look at Poison Ivy, because we've already established in previous episodes who Batman, Bruce Wayne, and Harvey Dent are. And we just got done talking about their relationship. But what about Poison Ivy? As we say, she's vengeful and she's a seductress. The one thing that I think is worth noting here is that we don't really get much motivation from her other than vengeance, and really we don't understand what her vengeance is other than that they built a prison on top of her plant, and she cares more about her plant than she cares about other people.
She cares more about all plants than she cares about all people, which is why I say I feel like she's clearly unhinged by the end. Like, this is not just someone who doesn't like the way that city politics are going and decided to take matters into her own hands. There are Gothamites who do that, but that's not this.
No, she wants to upset the natural order and have plants take over the planet, actually.
That is definitely a place that we get with her. I think right now she's not quite that fully formed. And again, we can play the behind-the-scenes game. I think even in her own mind, she's not to that level
quite
yet.
there yet. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But she definitely values plants over human beings.
The way she cried over the Batman threat, he beats her by threatening to kill a plant. He's pointing a gun to the plant and saying, "If you don't let me out, I'm going to shoot it." That's brutal, by the way.
Well, I really like it.
I don't know. I think it's great. I just think
very
it's brutal.
Smart. Let's remember, he's been poisoned at that point, and they are in the midst of a raging fire that may or may not be killing all the monster plants. I mean, he's got a lot of problems, but being poisoned is one of them.
I didn't say it was low. I didn't say that was too low. I just said it's pretty. When you put it in the context of, Batman's holding a gun to the thing she loves most head,
And she gives up on her revenge in that moment to get the plant back. And we see the horror on her face when she accidentally kills one of her plants. She was shooting a human being who got out of the way, and it killed her plant instead.
Yeah, right.
And it ruined her day.
Yeah, I think it pretty much messed her up pretty hard, if I had to say. So again, that's really all we need to know about that character, though, is that plant life. Yeah. And I think the motivation holds up. And it just, again, like a lot of noirs, the motivation isn't. Sometimes the motivation is the most interesting part, but rarely is it. It's more of a MacGuffin of sorts to help. MacGuffin might not be the right word. It's a thing that gets the character in the position they need to be vengeful, right?
Yeah. And I think it works well enough for Poison Ivy. If we were going to have a complaint about it, we talked a little bit about this with the femme fatale side. I don't think the existence of femme fatales is bad. I think it's bad when they're done poorly. If there's a place that Poison Ivy as femme fatale is weaker, it's the motivation.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree.
Everything else, she's highly competent. She's brilliant. She's beautiful. She's using all the tools to run a long con that will end up with 2 guys dead and maybe the Wayne fortune, because I think she's definitely angling to marry Bruce Wayne. Mm-hmm. After Harvey dies. Again, that's a little subtextual, but I think it's there. Yeah, all the pieces are there for that. Sure, we'll see better motivations.
Absolutely.
I mean, we keep talking about Heart of Ice, but when you get to Heart of Ice, you will see a gut-wrenching motivation for revenge.
Or even when you get to episode 10, you get very deep, strong motivations that are a reflection of our main character in a way I think is really, really fascinating.
That's a good point. We mentioned in the last episode that the largest number of Batman's villains that are most successful are because there's some kind of opposite number to him. Joker is madness to his order. Well, we'll just leave the rest of them sit until we get to talk about them. But that's an easy one.
Because, the Joker, we never get a defined backstory on him, really, 100%.
No, we're better off not having one.
Exactly.
But here we have Poison Ivy, who is not really an opposite number of Batman in any meaningful way. You might try and twist her around to be some sort of justice for plants thing, but it's tortured. And so we just breeze on past it, right? It's much more about the mystery than why she's doing the things that she's doing.
Right. And I will say, this is a great first Poison Ivy episode, but the character of Poison Ivy is used more effectively later down the road. Significantly more effectively, especially when you bring in Harley Quinn later on.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, we're going to see better plots, more interesting plots from her once she kind of expands her interest. We're going to see her interact with Harvey again after those episodes, after the things that happen that we aren't discussing right now.
Exactly.
That are just fascinating and build on this. And yeah, when she and Harley become a team up, look out. She gets the right treatment. And again, I don't think she's treated poorly here. It's just we're acknowledging if there's a weak spot, it's the motivation.
Yeah, exactly.
But people who have less than 100% sane motivations is a trope in Gotham that is just accepted.
The eccentricity gets pretty intense.
It's high. It's high level.
Very high in Gotham. All right, well, so just to kind of close out the talk, Joshua, do you think this holds up as well as you remember? Better? Worse?
The mystery portions definitely hold up better. The animation and some of the stylistic choices, not so much.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think I'll be right there with you. I remember this being a lot stronger. I remember being longer. I seem to recall thinking it was even a 2-parter, and I was way off base on that. And, I just think this is okay. It's not as strong as I remember. I do think it's a solid introduction to Poison Ivy. I love the riff on the femme fatale noir style. That's probably it's a very effective execution of genre in the context of Batman.
So we mentioned earlier that the actual plot doesn't start until the 8-minute mark. And some of the setup before that is actually really useful. Poison Ivy asking Harvey about Bruce, that lets us see how Harvey doesn't entirely understand his life, that flash sideways stuff. But we spend a couple of minutes on this weird sepia-toned flashback, and then we spend way more time than is necessary on the jailbreak that lets us see Batman doing stuff while Harvey thinks Bruce is just late. All so that we can look at this prison that winds up getting jammed in at the end.
Right.
So I submit to you,
a prison that in the long-term scheme of the show is inconsequential.
Yeah, it's totally inconsequential.
It gets replaced by Arkham.
I don't know that we ever see it again. Yeah. And it's certainly not remembered like we would talk about the coolness of Arkham Asylum, that supported a video game franchise.
Right.
I guess what I would say is I would love to imagine an alternate universe Pretty Poison that shaves the 5 wasted minutes off of the beginning and gives the middle bits that really work that room to breathe a little bit.
Right.
And then this would go from like a B- episode to an A+ episode.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Okay. I think rewriting the whole script without the bookends, where she has a different motivation, would really strengthen this, because I find it to be weak and consequential, and it doesn't really add anything to Batman. It doesn't really add anything to the lore. It doesn't really add anything to Poison Ivy. She's just vengeful. Okay, well, there are other ways you can establish that she's vengeful without having a really half-baked prison side plot in there. I mean, a million other ways. So for that to be the thing that pushes her into her vengeful, scornful person mode, to spend that much time to do that thing feels like a waste of time. And honestly could have been written better.
Imagine a scene where Batman realizes that it's an extinct rose that he needs to get the antidote.
Oh, yeah.
And that Alfred, who we've established is kind of dry and makes jokes, and has been kind of dry and jokey in this episode, but not as much as the previous.
Right.
Imagine that Alfred sharing with him the bad news. The only known place that it grew was this field that, just outside of Gotham, whatever.
Right.
And he's like, I'll drive out there right now. And he says, it's the field where you and Harvey put the prison. And let that, that's all I need to know. Now we understand what her motivation is. I don't know. There's just, it just feels like
there are other ways to accomplish that.
We don't even have to change her motivation as much as just
how you do it. Well, and
Stop
I don't think
taking
we have to,
up so much time.
You don't have to build a prison on top of it. You could do it a million different ways.
I do think the prison is important because that brings it back to a district attorney.
Sure,
like it's his baby.
Sure.
But again, these are just lines that we have to draw between Pamela and Harvey. Prison is a good one. Spending 5 to 7 of our 22 minutes on the prison when we have this really interesting, strong character. And honestly, this is also how I feel about the Keystone Cop stuff. Like, how necessary is it? Really giving Pamela an opportunity to shine. Could have just moved this B- episode to an A++.
Right.
All day.
Okay, yeah. I would say I'm right there. I'd probably give it a B. I mean, on the Batman scale, probably a C, because Batman the Animated Series transcends a lot of storytelling.
You need to update it. Yeah,
update it. So I mean, if you're looking at it in the context of Batman, I give it a C. It's average. And that's not bad. It's average. But it's an okay episode. If it didn't have Poison Ivy in it, it would be particularly memorable. Like, that's the only thing.
Right.
It's going to be remembered for being the first Poison Ivy episode, but that's literally about the only thing.
Yep. No, I agree.
Well, Joshua, of course, I always like to close out with this little fun recommendation section, and I've got a good recommendation for you. So, talking about the potential H.P. Lovecraft influences that we see here,
absolutely,
I'm going to recommend John Carpenter's 1995 kind of cult hit film, In the Mouth of Madness, which is a bizarre little flick. But if you want to look at some really weird H.P. Lovecraftian sci-fi stuff, you look at that movie, because that movie is so much fun. But it is weird, it's wacko. Absolutely, check that out. And maybe The Thing, maybe I like In the Mouth of Madness. I think would be a better fit, but
I think you're right. I think it would be a better fit for the freaky plant monster. Like the ties are closer there. So I think my recommendation will be another femme fatale done extraordinarily well.
Ooh, do tell.
One of the seminal noir films set off a whole genre, Double Indemnity.
Excellent. That movie is fantastic. And I think if you're going to look at for both the episode, the first 2 episodes, I think that's great. If you're going to look at noir, you can't beat Double Indemnity, the black and white, the femme fatale especially. Oh my gosh, she is. Barbara Stanwyck in that film is fantastic. You can never ever really understand her motivations. She has you guessing all the way through, even when you think you've got her figured out. And again, like the best femme fatales, uses all those tools in her toolbox to actually, again, I think, empower the image of women versus objectify, which is something that has happened to femme fatales throughout history.
And especially with Barbara Steinwick's character there, she is clearly very, very smart.
Oh, yeah.
But it takes a while for you to figure that out, right? Like, because she's running multiple cons on multiple people.
She plays dumb quite a bit.
She plays dumb and does it very, very well. I would say both like as an actress and in the fiction, so that you are a ways in before you go, oh, she's actually the one running every single bit of this. So yeah, Double Indemnity, personal favorite of mine. Billy Wilder, you can't go wrong with a Billy Wilder noir piece. All the dialogue is written by author favorite of mine, Raymond Chandler. So, and in the meantime, you get stupendous example of the femme fatale.
Awesome. Great choice.
Well, I think this has been a great animated discussion about On Leather Wings. Caleb, where can people go to continue the conversation with you?
Well, you can always find me on Twitter talking about film, television, and all manner of other sorts of pop culture goodness at C Masters Talk. On Twitter, again, that's at letter C Masters Talk. I'm also the editor-in-chief at a film website that specializes in in-depth critique and analysis of film, thecinematropolis.com. And we publish essays on all types of films, good comic book movies, all that good stuff, including some thoughts from my co-host Joshua here. And you can find all of those at thecinematropolis.com. Joshua, what about you?
I'm also most active on Twitter, where you can find me easily enough, at Joshua Unruh. I'm happy to field any superhero questions you might have, and who knows, it might even become a podcast unto itself. I'll also keep you in the loop on any fiction, articles, podcasts, or diatribes I cast out into the world, including my work at the Cinematropolis and for Pulp Diction Productions and Press.
Join us next time for Underdwellers, where we go deep down into the depths of Gotham, into the underbelly, to see what exactly is hiding down there. And just a little bit of a clue, it's not quite the alligators you're looking for. That's going to be episode 6 of the first season of Batman the Animated Series.
Until next time, we'll see you back here. Same bat time, same bat channel. Animated Discussion is a Pulp Diction Productions program and is 100% supported by listeners like you. To find out how you can keep this and our other shows in production, check out patreon.com/pulpdictionproductions. And if you can't support us financially, please leave us a rating and review on iTunes. It's the best way to help others discover the show. Keep up with Pulp Diction news by following at Joshua Unruh on Twitter, or find us at facebook.com/pulpdictionproductions.